that you bought from the farmer's market or online.
Hey there, welcome back. It is day 2 of week 2 of Fill the Freezer. So we're doing that series where I'm trying to stock up a lot of things in my freezer in the laundry room in there. And today we're going to make ginger garlic meatballs with a sweet and sour sauce to stock away in the freezer. I'm actually going to cook one of these for dinner tonight because if I'm going to cook all this stuff, I might as well at least save myself the hassle of making dinner too. So I'm going to start with the sauce because I want the sauce to kind of come up to a boil, bubble up, and cook together, and then I can start to cool it down before we try to put things in the freezer. So into the sauce is going to go, first I'm going to put the brown sugar in, and I can mix it with a little bit of flour that goes into this. That's 1 cup of brown sugar. It looks like more, but it's just a cup. That was packed and now it's kind of loosely packed. So I'm going to kind of mix together the flour and the brown sugar just quickly so that it doesn't try to really clump up when we put the liquid in there. The flour doesn't. So do that, and now I'll start to add the liquids, which is 1.5 cups of white vinegar. It sounds like a lot, but when it mixes with all the other ingredients, it's totally tame. So don't be too worried. White vinegar, I'm going to keep whisking so that we don't get a whole bunch of clumps from the flour. It's just 2 tablespoons of flour, but if you don't keep whisking, it could be clumpy. Next up is some ketchup, which is just 1 cup of ketchup. We'll dump that right in. The last ingredient is 1/4 cup of soy sauce. So that goes in too. I'm just going to whisk all that together. And then all we need to do, as I said, is just bring this to a bubble so that it can start to thicken up. And this is the sauce we'll use too. I'm not actually sure yet if I want to pour the sauce over the meatballs in the pans that I put the meatballs in, or if I'm just going to bag the meatballs, keep the sauce separate. But I am going to put the sauce along with whatever I do. I just haven't quite figured that out yet. I have some foil pans in my front room in there and kind of my stock of supplies. So I could put them in foil pans, but I just am not really sure yet. I'll figure that out after we get the meatballs all put together and they are frozen. Then I can figure out how to pack them up, right? That's all for this at the moment, and this is on about medium heat. So it just needs to kind of bubble together and we can leave it be for now. Now we'll work on the meatballs themselves. And I have a recipe on my website for these. It's called ginger garlic meatballs, and that's on brownfamilyrecipes.com. But today I'm making about 1.5 times the recipe that I have on there. So you can either follow this recipe or the recipe that you find there, whatever. I actually have added pork to the recipe too. My original recipe, I just used ground beef, but today I'm using 1 pound of ground pork as well. So completely up to you. If you want to add ground pork or not, you could totally do it with just ground beef. First, I'm going to put into my bowl. I don't actually think this bowl is big enough for all of the meat that I have there because I have about 3 pounds of meat. So let's grab a different bowl. I just want a bigger bowl because I know it's going to be difficult to mix all of this up together if not. So I'm going to crack in 2 eggs to begin with. I'd like to kind of do the liquid things first, mix all of those up till they're mixed together, and then I can go separately with the other things. So 2 eggs to begin with. This is about 1 teaspoon of sesame oil, about 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, and I also am going to add, just for myself, you can choose to add this or not, I'm also going to add about a tablespoon of hoisin to mine, just because we really like that flavor. Need a little spatula here. So that's a little hoisin as well. I don't want to neglect my sweet and sour sauce because I can hear it starting to bubble. So I'm going to mix it as I hear it bubbling up and keep an eye on it as well. I might even turn it down. Once it starts to bubble, I'll turn it down just a little bitty bit. Okay, so next up, I'm going to add in about 1/4 cup of milk. For my spices, I am using a 1/2 teaspoon of MSG and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. I don't find that I need any additional salt because this does have the soy sauce in it, but you can add it if you think you might need it. I have about a 1-inch knob of ginger that I've grated down here, and I have 3 cloves of garlic as well that I have grated. Just use my microplane for those typically. And then last up, you can use either 1 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, or here I'm using 1 teaspoon of the chili garlic crunch. I just prefer that one. It's just so good to me. It has a flavor all of its own. So yeah, that's totally up to you, but I use that in place of the red pepper flakes. And so into this wet mixture, I'm going to put the breadcrumbs into this as well. And that'll kind of hydrate the breadcrumbs with this mixture, and then when it'll mix the breadcrumbs throughout all of the meat, they'll all be sort of hydrated with this mixture as well. Give this a stir. Getting close. Okay, and then I have a 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs that's going to go in here. And I just stir those together with all that wet mixture. Next up, I'll just dump in the meat and we'll start to work this together. So meatballs are such a good thing to meal prep because if you do them in bulk, you could just, freeze the meatballs on a sheet pan after you roll them out, after you portion and roll them out, and then you could put them into a baggie in bulk. And that way, if you want to, you have the option of taking out only what you need. So if you're one person cooking for yourself, you take out how many meatballs you how many meatballs you want. If you know that for your meals, for you and your husband, for example, you like a small pan, you could do them like that. You just have a lot more options and flexibility than cooking up a big piece of meat or something like that. Okay, so next up, I have all of my liquid things in here, and it's kind of this gloopy weird mixture at this point, but it's going to be fine once we get all this pulled together. So here I have about 2 pounds of ground beef. That's going to go in, and then I have 1 pound of ground pork, and that's going to go in. So for us, this should make at least 3 meals. So at least one, like 1 pound per meal. I could probably cut it down a little bit more, but this is nice to have leftovers of this dish. Okay, I'm going to wash my hands really quick. Then I'm going to stir this, and then I'm going to get some gloves so I can mix all this up. Okay, hands washed. This is bubbling, so I better stir it. And you'll see once you get this to bubbling, the color starts to deepen and change a little bit, and that's how you'll know that you're nearly there. Also, it just becomes nice and thick. So it'll probably coat like the back of a spoon at this point, and instead of being a really runny mixture. And this is about as far as I want to take this, so I'm going to move it off the heat at this point. That's because if I choose to, I can cook my meatballs in this, and I don't want it to be overly thick when I pour it on initially, because it will continue to thicken as it cooks in the oven with the meatballs. There's my recipes I was looking for yesterday. I put things away so well, I hide them from myself usually. Before I stick my hands into this meat and start mixing, I'm going to get my pan out and get it lined also. All right, I'm just going to put my pan here until I'm ready for it. Now I'm going in with my gloved hands to mix up all of this meatball mixture. So you just want to bring it together. You don't want to completely overdo it. Otherwise, you'll have really tough meatballs, which is not the goal at all. Okay, I've got all my meatballs mixed up. My mixture is together here, and I can absolutely smell the ginger and garlic in these already. I can still smell it. It smells so fresh. So sadly, I broke my smallest cookie scoop when I was doing my Christmas cooking, like my Christmas baking, and I forgot that I needed to replace it. So all I have is my medium scoop or my large scoop. So guess what? We're going to have bigger meatballs today because I am not going to be freehanding these. I'm just going to make sure I do level scoops, and this will be probably a pretty good size actually. So let me get started on. Okay, now we've got them all rolled out. So these are going to go into the freezer, straight into the freezer to freeze solid, and then we will decide exactly what we want to do with them. Pan them up, bag them up. I'm not quite sure yet, but we know they have to be frozen before we can do anything with them. So let's throw them in the freezer. So for the sauce, what I have done is, this one is for tonight. I'm going to just use that one tonight for a little bit smaller portion. Then the other two I put into some deli containers. First, I'm going to put these into the refrigerator because you want this to be actually completely chilled before you put it into the freezer. Otherwise, it will get freezer burned. So everything needs to be basically chilled before it goes into the freezer. Otherwise, it will get freezer burned. And not where it won't be edible, but where it has ice crystals and everything on it. And then if it continues to have ice crystals on it, then it won't be edible. So you just want to chill everything down as much as possible before you put it into the freezer. So these I'll put into the fridge while I'm waiting on the meatballs. Okay, so for our dinner tonight, this is why I only used a small amount of sauce. I just did a small pan of meatballs. So this is probably about the right number of these meatballs for us, because we will also have like a bag of rice with it, you know, the microwave rice, and some vegetables. I like to do those stir-fry vegetables with rice whenever I do this. Honestly, you could put it all in together. If you poured those stir-fry vegetables over the top of this and then cooked it all together in the oven, you absolutely could do it that way as well. So I'm just going to store these in the refrigerator until I'm ready to cook those up for dinner tonight. These need to cook in the oven on 400, probably for about 30 minutes. And after they've cooked and they're completely done, then you can pour the sauce over top of them and let them cook together for just a little bit. And that just prevents the sauce, hello sir, that just prevents the sauce from getting way too thick on you, and where it's just, you know, basically cooks away into nothing. So bye-bye. Okay, hey there, welcome back. It is the day after I made the shredded beef barbacoa. I'm not actually sure if I can call it barbacoa or not. I know barbacoa is like beef cheek meat or something like that. This is just shredded beef in the crock pot, Mexican shredded beef, but barbacoa is a little bit more of a recognizable name. So that's why I'm probably going to call it that for my recipe and for the video. Okay, so anyway, it is the next day. Yesterday, that beef took so long to cook in the crock pot. Of course, I intended, number one, I intended to finish the video yesterday. That way I could post it. And number two, I intended to have that for dinner. That would have been great. We ended up having Chick-fil-A for dinner. Because that beef was not done. I put that in yesterday morning at about 9 o'clock. I think it just wasn't done because it was over 5 pounds of meat. If I had like 1 pack of meat, 2.5 pounds or whatever, if I had just the roast in there, it probably would have been done in no time, you know, as in normal amount of time. But because I had so much in the crock pot, and I turned it on low originally and I left it on low for about 2 hours. I had to run out to the store, came back a couple hours later, and I was like, this is gonna need to go to high because it was not even hot all the way through. So turned it on high for the rest of the time, and by 7 o'clock last night, I was like, okay, I think this is done now, but it just took a long time. It took a long time. So I just pulled it out of the crock pot around 7:30. Yeah, I think I turned it off finally at 7 or 7:30 and let it sit on the counter and cool down just for a little while. And then I just took it out to my little fridge out in the guest house, put it in there for overnight. It's actually kind of a good thing for the meat because we can skim the fat off now that it's cold and refrigerated. So for one half of it, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna run out and get the meat, number one. And then I want to make some taquitos with part of it. That's what we'll have for dinner tonight. Those will be really good. And then I want to put the rest up in the freezer for my fill the freezer. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Let's run out to the little guest house and grab that out of there. So here's this. Smells good already. So I'll show you what, I'm just gonna grab a spoon here. So this is what I mean by we can actually take the fat off of this, which will be really good. So what I'll do is I'll just go through with my spoon and kind of skim that fat off, trying to leave the meat, of course. But then we won't have nearly as much in our bags, and I'll just, I don't know, give that to the chicken. All right, so what I took out was 1 pound of the cooked meat. The rest, I'm gonna go ahead while I have the thing sitting here and just package it up in my freezer bags. I think I'm gonna weigh it and do 1 pound portions of the meat. Let's see how much we get. Let's see how far we get with that. See, I'm gonna write on 2 bags because I don't know if we have enough for 3. I just put the beef in, and I like to lay it flat on an empty shelf, you know, to make sure it freezes really flat. Up here is the pork, marinated pork that we did the other day, ginger garlic meatballs, and there's sauce back there. Fruit crumbles, banana muffins. I just took one of those out so that I can have it for breakfast, brunch, lunch, something. And then up top is cookie dough, which I have maybe eaten some of. I had some taco chicken and some ground beef and some, what else is that? Rice back there. That was already in here. And then rolls, of course. So we have a bit of room still. All of this can be pushed to the back. Oh, and a few things that I had done when we did chicken meal prep not long ago. I'll try to link that video up here as well. So we've got room yet. We got room here in the front. Some of this stuff can move up or whatever or be consolidated. But I just wanted to show you where we are in filling up the freezer here. Bit of room yet to be had, and a couple of open empty shelves down there too, so we have work to do. Here's my shadow right behind me. Hi. This is the portion of the week that I made a rookie mistake, and I didn't realize it, but I had my camera set in slow motion. Obviously to you it doesn't look like slow motion because I've sped it up,
but also it doesn't record any sound when you are recording in slow motion. And not only did I record in slow motion on this day of the week that I'm finishing this barbacoa up, but I also recorded in slow motion on the next 2 or 3 days of the week. So that was great. And I'm just making up the taquitos that we're going to have for dinner on the night that I'm making this barbacoa or finishing the barbacoa. It was excellent, you guys. The recipe is on my website, brownfamilyrecipes.com. I shared it there. It's absolutely a basic recipe, but the flavor was so delicious. And honestly, maybe keeping it over until the next day actually helped. Maybe that deepened the flavor. I'm not really sure, but it was so good. And in the taquitos, it was even better. So what I did with the taquitos that made them really stellar was I actually pan fried them rather than just cooking them into my air fryer. So I put about 1/4 inch of oil in my skillet, and then I just did them in small batches, turning them to make them nice and crispy on all the sides, and they were excellent. While I was cooking, though, I used my air fryer basket, and I just store them in there so that once we're ready to eat, I can heat them all up and get them, extra crispy over the top. Just pull the toothpicks out. Don't forget about those. But the flavor on these was so good. And the final day that I recorded this week, I am making hamburger patties. Now, stay with me because you're going to see me put in here breadcrumbs, and a lot of people from the internet on my YouTube shorts are not a fan of putting a breadcrumb into a hamburger patty, which I completely understand. But I assure you, these hamburger patties turn out extra juicy and delicious. They were so good. So I'm also making, you'll notice that I'm also making a lot of like grilling recipes, like the little pork medallions. I put up some chicken this week. I just didn't record it. All I did was just put the chicken breast in marinade. But the reason I'm doing so many grilling recipes is simply because that's how I like to cook in the spring and summer months. Don't heat up the kitchen, heat it up outside. You know what I mean? Get outside and stay out as late as possible in the evenings and enjoy our time while it's nice and warm. Honestly, it'll be screaming hot here pretty soon, but that's okay too. I can handle that. I'm happier in the heat than I am in the cold for sure. So I just mixed up all the little basic ingredients that go into these and make these super flavorful and juicy. Now I'm weighing out because I want them each to be 1/3 pound burger patty. If you want to do a thinner patty that you can cook on the Blackstone, like a smash burger style, don't weigh them out to 1/3 pound. Do less than that because you won't need as much for like a smash burger. But these will be regular grilled burgers. I actually cooked some in the skillet this week as well from frozen, and they were excellent too. So as I said, they stay really tender and juicy because they do have a little bit of breadcrumb and other ingredients in there that make them so flavorful. So I think you'll love this recipe as well. It is also on my website. So all I did was weigh them out, as I said, and then I went back and I used my little hamburger press. It is a super basic hamburger press, might I say, and that is excellent because it doesn't get meat in all the nooks and crannies. I had a press before and it had a lot of parts and stuff, and it would just get so dirty and hard to clean. So that's it for today. These are going into the freezer. I tried to force them all into one bag. I decided against it, and I separated them out into 2 freezer bags at that point. You could vacuum seal these as well, but I know that we're going to be in and out of this bag a good bit, so I'm not even going to worry about it, you guys. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I have had a blast sharing all these meal prep recipes with you, and don't forget to come back next week because I'm still going.